Structuralist and postmodernist philosophy associated with Michel Foucault, Jacques Derrida and others, which, at its most extreme, emphasizes that every perception of reality is mediated by language, that every text has a range of possible meanings, and that historical research itself is nothing more than a reflection on discourse. If the past has no reality outside the historian's representation of it, it follows that reality cannot be distinguished from its representation. History thus becomes merely one literary genre amongst others, little different from the novel. Valuable in encouraging historians to question their assumptions, a post-structuralism that challenges the bases on which the social sciences have been constructed, including the belief in a verifiable knowledge and the value of empirical research, has ultimately to be dismissed as an intellectual dead end, as little more than the rehashing of ancient philosophical arguments concerning the nature of reality. Jargon-ridden and increasingly self-referential, postmodernism became a caricature of itself, an arrogant and elitist linguistic game. Whilst it is important to acknowledge the need to develop more complex and inclusive models of causation, it is also vital to approach culture and identity, language and consciousness as changing phenomena to be explained rather than as the ultimate explanation of all other social phenomena. Tilly. Individuals develop a social awareness within the multiplicity of complex situations experienced in daily life. Identity is not a constant. The construction of a meaningful explanatory context by the historian requires acknowledgement of the large as well as the small-scale structures that impinge on the individual and provide the bases for social interaction. The real crisis facing history is probably its fragmentation. Typically, the professional historian engages in research, leading to the publication of monographs designed to advance knowledge and analysis, in teaching intended to develop critical and questioning attitudes amongst students, and in what the French refer to as vulgarization, a most unfortunate term to describe the essential task of communicating with the widest possible audience. The challenge this imposes is to reconcile professional credibility with the commercial demands of the media. Both in print and on television, demands for accessibility threaten to result in simplifying distortions of complex historical situations and a return to the worst kind of descriptive history, together with accounts of the deeds of the great, that by downplaying context ignore the revolution in historical method inaugurated almost a century ago by Bloch and Fèvre. The central theme of this book is thus the continuing process of interaction between state and society. The state has been defined by the historical sociologist Theda Skocpol in States and Social Revolution, 1979, as a set of administrative, policing and military organizations headed and more or less well coordinated by an executive authority. The maintenance of these administrative and coercive organizations, of course, requires the extraction of resources from society, demands that are magnified in the case of war, which has in consequence served as a major stimulus to the evolution of state institutions. At least since John Locke, liberal writers have tended to concentrate on the state as a morally neutral force, enforcing law and order and defending its citizens against external threats. This ignores the question of the social origins of legislators and law enforcers, the ways in which they perceived their roles, and their attitudes towards those over whom they ruled. The alternative tradition is represented by Karl Marx and the Italian sociologists Vilfredo Pareto and Gaetano Mosca, who saw the state as the instrument of a ruling minority, and by Antonio Gramsci, who insisted upon the significance not only of coercive state institutions, but of the cultural predominance achieved by social elites as means of maintaining social control and limiting the impact of otherwise competing value systems. This is not to argue that the state somehow automatically represents the interests of